It was a humid evening in the late summer when the sun began its slow descent over the small town of East Ridge, a place caught between the gritty world of outlaws and the slow pulse of suburban routine. The town had never seen much excitement, save for the occasional rumble of motorcycles tearing through its main street, or the flash of sirens that echoed from the police station. But that evening, the calm was about to be shattered. Sergeant John Hawk Hawkson had been stationed at the East Ridge Police Watchtower for the past few months. He was a man of few words, a relic of another time, tough, no-nonsense, and above all, disciplined. He'd served his country in the military, where he had earned his stripes in some of the world's most dangerous places. The battlefield had hardened him, but the quiet life as a small-town cop was a different kind of challenge. Hawk was used to fighting wars, not patrolling sleepy streets. But the solitude of the watchtower suited him just fine. It gave him time to think, time to reflect on the life he had left behind, and time to avoid the drama that always seemed to follow people like him. But that night was different. That night, everything would change. It started as it always did, quiet and uneventful. Hawk sat in the small, dimly lit observation room, staring out across the street, scanning for anything unusual. His eyes were sharp, trained from years of experience. The occasional car passed by, but nothing to raise alarm. Then, the rumble of engines reached his ears, and Hawk's instincts kicked in. He could hear the low growl of the motorcycles before he even saw them, the unmistakable sound of a gang coming into town. The riders appeared like dark shadows, cruising down the main road with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you own the place. The Hell Riders were a notorious outlaw gang known for their violent tendencies and their refusal to follow anyone's rules except their own. Hawk had encountered them a few times during his time as a cop, but never like this. They pulled up to the small diner at the corner, a popular spot for locals to gather for a late meal. Hawk's eyes narrowed as the bikers dismounted, their leather jackets emblazoned with the Hellrider insignia. There were 6 of them in total, each one larger than the last, their faces hidden behind dark sunglasses and bandanas. They were trouble, plain and simple. But Hawk wasn't the kind of man who shrank from trouble. In fact, he welcomed it. He stood up from his chair, his boots clicking against the cold concrete floor of the watchtower. Hawk had been trained to keep his distance, to assess situations with precision. But as he watched the Hellriders swagger into the diner, he knew this wasn't going to be a typical run-in. These guys weren't here for food. They were here to send a message. Hawk grabbed his radio and keyed it. "This is Watchtower 1. We've got Hellriders at the diner." "Requesting backup." The dispatcher's voice crackled through. "Copy, Hawk. Backup is en route. Hold tight." Hawk didn't wait. He grabbed his jacket and stepped out into the cool night air, locking the door behind him. The town was quiet, the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind, the only sound as he made his way toward the diner. His mind was already calculating the best course of action. He was no rookie. He knew how to deal with punks like this. But there was something different about the Hellriders, something darker. As Hawk neared the diner, he saw one of the bikers standing outside, lighting a cigarette. He was a hulking figure, his tattoos covering every visible inch of his skin. Hawk approached him with purpose, his boots making no sound on the pavement. "Hey," Hawk called out. The biker turned, the cigarette dangling from his lips. "What's up, cop?" "I don't want any trouble." "Just letting you know, this is a quiet town," Hawk said, his voice calm but firm. "We don't take kindly to strangers causing chaos." The biker snorted, a low, guttural sound that made Hawk's blood run cold. "Well, maybe you should get used to it, old man. This town's ours now." Before Hawk could respond, the diner door swung open and the rest of the gang spilled out into the street, laughing and shouting. They were clearly drunk, and their aggression was growing by the second. "You hear that, boys?" the biker said, motioning to his friends. "The cop thinks he's got control of this town." One of the bikers, a woman with piercing green eyes and a skull tattoo on her neck, stepped forward. "What's it gonna be, officer?" she sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "You gonna arrest us for parking? Or do we need to teach you some respect?" Hawk didn't flinch. He stood tall, his hands resting at his sides. "You've got two choices. You can leave now, or I'll have you all escorted out in handcuffs." The woman laughed, a sound as cold as ice. "Is that a threat, cop?" Before Hawk could respond, one of the bikers lunged toward him, a knife gleaming in his hand. Hawk was faster. He sidestepped the strike and grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it until the knife clattered to the ground. In the same fluid motion, he delivered a hard punch to the biker's gut, sending him sprawling backward. The other bikers didn't hesitate. They charged at him, but Hawk was ready. He had been in worse scrapes than this, and his military training kicked in. He disarmed one of them with a well-placed kick to the knee, sent another crashing to the ground with a judo throw. And when the woman with the skull tattoo came at him with a crowbar, he grabbed her wrist, twisting it until she dropped the weapon. The gang was realizing too late that they had made a serious mistake. But the fight wasn't over. As the last of the bikers backed away, a familiar roar of engines filled the air. Hawk turned to see two police cruisers speeding down the street, lights flashing and sirens blaring. Backup had arrived. The Hell Riders, outnumbered and bruised, didn't put up a fight. They stumbled back to their bikes, but not before throwing Hawk one last look, a mix of hatred and begrudging respect. They knew they had messed with the wrong man that night. As the bikers revved their engines and sped off into the distance, Hawk took a deep breath, his pulse returning to normal. His backup, two officers from the local station, approached him, their expressions a mixture of awe and concern. "You all right, Hawk?" one of them asked. "Yeah," Hawk said, his voice steady. "Just another day on the job." The officers chuckled, but Hawk could see the respect in their eyes. They had heard the stories, but now they had seen it for themselves. Sergeant John Hawk Hawkson was a man who didn't back down, no matter the odds. And that night, he had reminded the Hell Riders that even in a small town, the wrong move could be their last. As the adrenaline faded, Hawk turned and walked back toward the Watchtower. It had been a long night, and the quiet of the tower was a welcome reprieve. But deep down, Hawk knew that in this town, trouble never really left. It just waited for the right moment to strike again. And when it did, Hawk would be